So Kate's just going to MC.
That's fine.
Read the pledge and then
Okay, everybody, are you excited to be here? Woo! All right, if everybody could find your seats, and let's get ready to tell it like it is. First off, we're going to start with the pledge. Our state representative, Jim McConnell, is going to come up here and lead us. So if everyone would please stand.
There's the flag over here.
Flag's over here.
Hi, Skate. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, it's wonderful to see you all here tonight. We're so happy to have Governor Christie here and all of you here tonight. If you want to get involved with Cheshire County Republicans, see me after this is over. We have lots of room for people to work with us. We have a lot of work to do, and I'm excited because we're going to turn this county red again. If I can, you know, if we can do it, don't you think? Come on now, everybody, come on. Okay, right now I'm going to introduce our former Senate President, Tom Eaton.
Thank you, Kate Day. And I want to also thank Donnie and Hillary Ash for being our hosts here tonight. A good round of applause for them. And for all their staff that's here, too. They've helped a great deal also. I'd like to recognize also our National Committee woman, Juliana Bergeron. I've had the honor to meet the governor several times and actually have him out at my lake house a couple of weeks ago. We had a nice crowd and a beautiful day. We're sorry we're going to miss Mary Pat. Mary Pat is a sweetheart, his wife. In this overly politically correct world, it seems, that we're getting into now, it's nice to see someone that tells you what it is straight on, no BS. And he means what he says, he follows through, and that's what we need as leaders in our country now and all over. So without any further ado, Governor. Governor Chris Christie.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, I am really happy to be back in New Hampshire. Really happy to be here tonight. Donnie and Hillary, thank you for letting us be here tonight. I've always found out, I've done 138 town hall meetings as governor of New Jersey. This is my 15th now in New Hampshire. We've had a number of them at VFW halls, and that's been wonderful. But we've had a number of them at places just like this. And I find that when people start drinking, my town halls get better. So definitely make sure you do that during the next period of time we're going to spend together. I want to thank Tom for his introduction and for his friendship. I appreciate it a great deal. I want to thank my chairman of my campaign here in New Hampshire, who's with me tonight again, as always, Wayne McDonald. Wayne, thank you for being here. And this is real simple. I'll talk about a couple of things off the top, but then I'm going to leave the overwhelming majority of the time for you to ask me questions about whatever it is that's on your mind, and I get to answer it. That's usually your favorite part, and it's mine too. So I'm going to waste a lot of time up front. I want to talk about two things real quickly. Lots of different stuff we've talked about already in this campaign, and I urge you to go to our website. We have been more specific than any candidate in this campaign on the issues that we think really matter to the future of our country. I'm sure a bunch of those topics will come up tonight, but I want to talk to you about two of them briefly off the top. First one is this. In a presidency that I think many of us would agree has been very disappointing. I think what the president has done in the last 2 weeks has been the single worst thing that he's done as president of the United States. The deal that he's signed with the Iranians, it will definitely achieve the one thing he said he wanted to achieve through all this was a legacy. Well, he's going to get a legacy from this, but not a legacy that I think he's going to be proud of when it's all said and done, and certainly not something that we want for our country or for allies around the world. Why? First off, because it's a bad deal, everybody. It's a bad deal for the United States and for our allies, and here's why. Not only does it ensure that the Iranians will eventually become a nuclear power, but in the meantime, it does a bunch of other things for the Iranians. Now, you remember the president, when he was asked about why the folks who are being held in Iran were not released as part of this deal, the president said, well, that's because this was just about the nuclear situation. This deal was not about anything else. Well, that's not true, because in 5 years under this deal, the conventional arms embargo that's currently against Iran will be lifted. That has nothing to do with nuclear arms either, but that's part of the deal. And in 8 years under this deal, the ban on technology that can give Iran ballistic missiles, missiles that can shoot warheads intercontinental, that's being lifted as well. And $150 billion in Iranian assets will be turned over as part of this deal as well. Now, I don't know exactly what the Iranians are going to do with $150 billion, but I can guarantee you that it's not going to be building highways. All right? These are the folks who are the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, the main funders of Hezbollah, the main funders of unrest in Yemen. These are folks who know how to use their money to be able to cause tumult and violence in the world in the direction that they want to move. But the worst part of all this is, and I say this sadly, because we only have one president of the United States at a time. And you hate to think that a president would do this on purpose, but I believe he has. The president's lied to us. He stood up in front of the American people 13 days ago, and he said that this agreement wasn't based on trust, because he knows that none of us trust the Iranians. He said, this isn't built on trust. He said, this is about verification. We can verify anything, anytime, anywhere with the Iranians. Their compliance with this agreement can be verified anytime, anywhere. He said it a number of times. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the big lie of the second term of the Obama presidency. Because here's the way it works. We have a place we want to go and inspect because we think they may be cheating on the deal. We can go and ask. But then when we ask, the Iranians can object. And if they object, then an arbitration panel gets impaneled where the Iranians have a vote. And then that arbitration panel has 24 days to consider the merits of the request, and then it only then has to decide whether we're allowed to inspect or not. Now, I don't know how you define anytime, anywhere, but I don't define it that way. And I'll tell you this, I was a prosecutor for 7 years. I was the United States Attorney for New Jersey for 7 years. That would be like me getting a search warrant on one of your homes because I had probable cause to believe that a crime was being committed. And that a judge agreed with me and gave me that search warrant. And I then came to the front door of your home. I knocked on the door. I said, I have a search warrant here because we believe you're engaged in criminal conduct, and I'll be back in 24 days to see if there is any evidence here of a crime. Now, I have to tell you something. Even the stupidest criminals in New Jersey, and we, by the way, pride ourselves on having some of the stupidest criminals in America. But even the stupidest criminals in New Jersey, when I came back in 24 days, that evidence would be gone. And here's the sad thing, everybody. The Iranians are not stupid. Far from it. We'll never catch them cheating, because this president has agreed to a set of inspection protocols which will make sure that we can never catch them cheating. So not only will they get the ballistic missile technology, not only will they get all the conventional arms that they want within 5 years, not only will they have $150 billion to spend on terrorist activity around the world, but they're going to become a nuclear power anyway. And when they do, if you're the Egyptians or the Jordanians or the Emiratis or the Saudis, are you going to sit by and allow yourselves to be held hostage by an Iranian nuclear power? My guess is you're going to start now. You're going to start now to develop your own nuclear technology. And then we'll have a nuclearized Middle East surrounding Israel. That is a world that is extraordinarily dangerous for the Israelis and for the United States. And don't forget, these intercontinental ballistic missiles are not used to shoot warheads at Jordan or the Saudis. They're meant to shoot them here. This is a whole new world, everybody, and this president has done this willingly with a group of folks, and I'm looking around this room, and I think most of you in this room are old enough to remember 1979, as I am. And I remember these folks taking our hostages, and I remember them holding them for 444 days, and I remember them burning the American flag, and I remember them shouting and chanting "Death to America," which, by the way, they've been doing as late as a week ago. And the supreme ruler, that's an interesting title, huh? I thought President of the United States was good. Supreme leader is not bad, right? The supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah, said just last week that nothing about this agreement will change what we think about the United States, how we deal with the United States, our relationship with the United States. This is an abject failure, and I'm talking about it all the time and doing ads here in New Hampshire about it because I think it's so important that the United States Congress does what the founders gave them the ability to do, which was to be a check and balance on the executive branch. If a president took leave of his senses, which is what this president has done in signing this agreement and this Secretary of State, if they do, Congress can stop them. And they should vote no on this deal. And when the president, and this is another thing I love about the president, right? When he gave this speech nearly 2 weeks ago tomorrow, he said, I welcome a robust debate in Congress over this deal. And then 2 sentences later said, but if they vote no, I will veto it. It really looks like he was looking to be informed by a robust debate, right? If there's a robust debate, I welcome it as long as it agrees with me. But if it doesn't, I'd be happy to just say no to them. Well, if he does say no and does veto it, they should override that veto. This should not be about politics, everybody. This should not be about Republicans versus Democrats. That, I think, right now is the greatest threat to our country's security abroad. The biggest threat to us at home is if these lights go out. No, they're back. Okay. The biggest threat to us at home is if we don't deal with the way we're spending our money in this country. We watched, or keep them off. It doesn't really bother me. We watched what's been happening in Greece of late. We see what happens when you don't tell each other the truth. You know, the Greeks now are dealing with an awful situation because for years they were unwilling to tell each other the truth about the way they were spending money, the programs and promises their politicians were making, and their unwillingness to deal with limits in life. Times when we just have to say no as much as we might want to say yes. That's why when I started this national conversation in advance of this campaign, the first speech I gave here in New Hampshire was on entitlement reform. Right now, the federal budget, 71% of the federal budget is spent on entitlements and debt service. 71% on entitlements and debt service. 55 years ago, when John Kennedy was running for president of the United States, 26% of the federal budget was spent on entitlements and debt service. Now we're at 71%. We flipped it almost completely on its head. Now, this is not sustainable. And if we continue to spend at the current rates by 2030, it's only 15 years from now, everybody. Every nickel we currently raise in taxation will be spent on entitlements and debt service. That means no money for education, no money for national defense, no money for research and development, no money to do the things that we need to do to protect ourselves in the intelligence community. Go over and over it. All we'll be doing is spending money on Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security disability insurance, and payments on the national debt. So, worse than all that, of course, is what that will lead to is the insolvency of these programs that so many people count on now and will count on in the near future. And so we need to talk about it. And I put forward a really detailed 12-point proposal on how to do this. Now, here's the good news for all of you tonight. It's actually two pieces of good news. One, the bar is still open, and two, I am not going to go over all 12 points of the 12-point plan to deal with entitlements, but I'll tell you about two of them right off the top because they're the most important. Let's talk about Social Security and Medicare. Here's the good news. The good news is we're all living longer. We are all living longer. The average life expectancy for a woman in America now is 83 years old. And the average life expectancy for a man is 79 years old. I see a few women smiling. You right there, I saw you. I saw you smiling. Here's the thing though, 10 years ago, the life expectancy gap was 6 years. Now it's 4. We're gaining on you. And that 4-year vacation you are hoping for from us at the very end, you may not get if we keep going. But 83 and 79 and the quality of our lives because of our medical care, because of the pharmaceuticals that are available to us now as we live longer is generally better too. And so that's a great thing. It's a blessing. It's a blessing that we're having longer lives. But these programs, Social Security, Medicare, were designed for when people's life expectancy was in their 60s. So we're living 15 to 20 years longer than was originally planned. While that's a blessing for us, it's not a blessing for the Social Security fund, and it's not a blessing for what we pay for Medicare. So people are living longer and taking money from those funds longer. And so what's the natural reaction we should have to that? Well, then we have to adjust to the happy circumstance we have. So I say we should raise the retirement age by 2 years. Now listen, before anybody goes crazy, we're going to phase it in over 25 years. That means the retirement age goes up 1 month a year for 25 years. Now, the world will not stop spinning on its axis, everybody, for 1 month a year for 25 years. So later on, you got all this videotape, right? They'll take just a small piece of it. The Hillary Clinton campaign will take a small piece of it and say, and Governor Christie, if he's elected president, wants to throw grandma off the cliff, right? Understand one of two things under my proposal. That is either one of two things. The highest cliff grandma's ever been thrown off, because it'll take 25 years for her to hit bottom, or gravity has stopped as we know it for how long it will take. 1 month a year, every year for the next 25 years. That will not mean a lot to anyone who's on Social Security now or who is close to Social Security now, but it will mean a lot for my children. And it should, because it'll help make sure there's solvency for that program over the long term. Secondly, I think we need to means test Social Security, and let me tell you exactly what I mean by that. Fact is, let's say that over the course of your lifetime, you've been able to work hard, be successful, and you have $4 or $5 million in liquid assets. I'm not talking about your home. I'm about $4 to $5 million in assets that you can invest and throws off income to you. And it throws off $200,000 or more in retirement income. So you've stopped working, and from your investments alone, you're making $200,000 a year or more. Do you really need a Social Security check at that point? You're making $200,000 a year or more in retirement. You have $4 to $5 million in liquid assets invested. Listen, I'd suggest to you don't need it. And the fact is that that's not what Social Security was designed for. Social Security was designed for what it says, to provide you security that if you worked all your life and paid into the fund, that you would not grow old in poverty, that you would not have to choose between rent and heat and food. Well, if you're making $200,000 in retirement income, God bless you. You have been good to your family, and this country has been good to you to give you the opportunity to have that level of success as well. And if everyone says, well, listen, it's not fair. I had a guy in Exeter. I think it was my first town hall meeting here in Exeter at Shooter's Pub. I told you I've been going to these things for a while. And so he stood up and said, don't call it an entitlement. I put money in, I want my money out. And I said, well, is that your principle on everything, sir? You put money in, you want it back out? He said, yes. And I said, well, how about homeowners insurance? So you own a home? Yes, okay. I said, well, you pay for homeowners insurance every year. I said, if your house doesn't burn down not some other calamity that's covered by the insurance. You pay that insurance every year. And if you sell your home at the end of 30 years that you're there, you go to the closing, do you invite the insurance company to the closing and say, by the way, I've made no claims for 30 years, I'd like my money back? After the insurance company gets done laughing, what they will say to you is, no, you don't understand. What you got for that money was the security of knowing that if something happened and you needed it, we were going to be there for you. That's what you got. Now, for folks who are making over $200,000 a year in retirement, they don't need that sense of security. And I do think they need to know that our country is going to continue, and that for the people who do need Social Security, that they're going to get it. Now, none of this, by the way, I apply this to Medicare also, same rules. Increase eligibility 2 years, phased in over 25. And if you're making over $200,000 a year in retirement income, then instead of subsidizing your Medicare premium 75%, which is what we do now, we'd only subsidize it 10%. So you still get a subsidy, just a smaller one. So if you have the money to pay for it, we think you should, and to make sure that those who don't and have paid into the system are able to make sure that they can get the medical care that they need in this country. I think that's fair. And, you know, Governor Huckabee, when I announced my plan, he said, this is awful. If you pass Governor Christie's plan, it will be ratifying lying and stealing by the government. And a message for Governor Huckabee, for everybody else here. The lying and stealing has already occurred. Right? Lying and stealing has already occurred. Remember Al Gore in 2000 in the lockbox? Yeah. Let me tell you what's in the lockbox. A stack of IOUs. They're spending your payroll tax money now. And they're giving you an IOU for later. And so let's not lie to each other anymore. Let's not deceive each other because it feels a little bit better. Because what we're doing is we're selling our country down the road for comfort today. We're selling our children's future down the road. And that's never, ever been what America has been about. It has always been about wanting to make sure that our children and our grandchildren have a better country than it was for us. Now that means we're going to have to step up now, and we're going to have to do some hard things, like the things I talked about. But you know what? It's better than the alternative. It's better than watching lines of people outside a bank who can't get their money out of banks in Greece. It's better than banks being closed for a week or 2 weeks, and everybody wondering whether the money they have in their hand really is worth anything. We'll be able to make these programs solvent again, and we'll be able to ensure that we have money to invest in the other things we need to invest in our country, like education, like research and development to cure the next set of diseases or treat the next set of diseases, like our national defense to make sure that our homeland is safe and secure and that the world is a place that is being influenced by a strong and free America. All those things we need to be able to do. So that's why I'm talking about this, because believe me, there have been political advisors who have told me I am crazy. They don't think you're ready to hear it. They think I'll talk about this and you'll just turn your head and put it in the sand. I have a lot more confidence in the American people than they do. I believe the American people are mature and they're ready to hear the truth and they're ready to deal with it. They don't like it because they've been lied to and stolen from. But in the end, they're ready to deal with the problem because that's what America's always been like. So those are the two things I want to talk about off the bat. Now we're going to stop and get to whatever it is you want to talk about. There's really only one rule in these meetings. You raise your hand, I call on you. Okay, that's it. And why do I say that's the one rule? How could it possibly be different? Well, you know, with some candidates who are coming up here asking for your vote for president, they make you write down the question. And then they give this question to their staff, and their staff reviews the questions and knows which ones they like to answer and which ones they don't. I don't call that a town hall meeting. I call that like a pop quiz. It's like a pop quiz where it's rigged. So we don't do that. And the other thing is, I don't answer yelled out questions. There's a young man outside who was yelling questions at me, and he seemed to be stunned at how well I could ignore it. That has nothing to do, by the way, with the fact that I'm governor. Nothing. Nothing to do with the fact that I'm a candidate for president. It has everything to do with the fact that I am the father of 4 children. When you are the father of 4 children, right? You all know it. You develop a finely honed skill to to ignore things that are being yelled at you. So as a father, I am here to ignore yelled out questions in honor of all fathers and mothers who know that we need to have a little order in our lives every once in a while. It's funny, I use that phrase, finally honed. We were in the car last night with my 14-year-old son, Patrick. And I used the word honed. And he said, what's that mean? I said, man, you're 14. You're telling me you know what honed means? And he says, no, I don't. And you told me if I don't know a word, I'm supposed to ask. I said, all right, good. So I explained to him what honed meant. And he said to me, isn't there an easier word for that? So Patrick's trying to remind me to keep my vocabulary straight on the right way. So you keep your vocabulary straight on, I'll keep mine straight on, and we'll answer some questions. Start right here with you, sir.
You make some good points about the corners on some of the financial spending that the government is doing. What are your thoughts about slowing up or completely eliminating the benefits and entitlements that we're paying out to non-citizens who are resident here within the United States, particularly illegally?
Sure. Listen, this is... Go ahead. You can applaud for that if you like. I'll wait till your applause is done. A couple of things. First off, everything that I talked about tonight, if you listen carefully, what I said was that these benefits need to be there for the people who have paid into the system. And the priority in this country has to be given to the people who have worked hard and paid into the system. Now, America is always going to be and always has been a compassionate place. And it's a place where people do not want to see people dying in the streets. They don't want to see people going hungry, both either through government action or through charitable conduct. And so we're never going to change from that kind of country. But you are absolutely correct that the priority has to be for those people who have worked hard and played by the rules and paid into the system, that we need to make sure those folks are taken care of. And whatever we need to do, whatever steps we need to do that are consistent with being a compassionate nation, which I think we always need to be, as an example not only for the world, but for our own children. That has to be balanced against the fiscal realities that I just spoke about. And the people who need to be taken care of, first and foremost, are the people who have worked hard, played by the rules, and paid into the system. And that's exactly the way I'd prioritize it if I were president. Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you. Hi, you talked about one fiscal crisis that's coming as far as entitlements go. Another looming crisis we have is the millennium generation. These kids graduating from college with extremely high burden of student loans. The government borrows money for less than 3%. They loan it out at 7.5%, 8%. They're making money off of these kids. Now these kids can't, because they have student loans, such a high, $100,000, $150,000 worth of loans, they can't buy a house, they can't buy a car, they can't start a business. They're hamstrung. What can we do to take the burden off of these kids? I'm speaking from experience. I got one that's $100,000 in debt.
I'll tell you, I say this is about our 15th town hall meeting. The first 13, I got asked a question just like that. And I kept going back and saying to people, they would ask me, I was at the union leader today, they're asking me, what do you get asked the most? And I told them it's about student debt. And then in fact, up until the last town hall meeting, every one I'd been answered. So I'm glad you started the streak back by answering me about this, because it's a very important topic. A couple of things. First off, on the loan side of things, they should be able to renegotiate the rates of their loan. This is the only loan that you can't renegotiate the terms. You got a car loan, you can renegotiate it. You got a home mortgage, you can renegotiate it. If interest goes down, interest rates go down. This, you're not permitted to do it. That doesn't make any sense, and we shouldn't be making money off the backs of our students who are just trying to start life. This loan was supposed to be a hand up to them to help them get the education that they need. So we should have to be able to do that. Second, there should be options for them to be able to serve in public service, whether it be military service or whether it be other types of public service, to be able to work off some of that at the beginning of their careers if they want to. And we should be giving them an option to be able to do that. And we could benefit also from their service at the beginning of their careers. That should be a second option they should be given. But third, we need to deal with the cost of college. And we're not dealing with the cost of college, right? Every time I get asked about this, we get walked into a conversation about what we do about the loan amounts, which is right. But here's the problem. They're borrowing so much because it costs so much. And there are no market forces on the cost of tuition like there are market forces every place else. I'll give you an example, and you have a child with $100,000 in debt, you already know and understand this. But for everybody else's benefit who may not, we have 2 children in college right now. Our son Andrew is 21. He is going to be a senior this fall at Princeton. Our daughter Sarah is 19. She's going to be a sophomore at Notre Dame. Their tuition between the 2 of them this year, starting in the fall for this year, will be $122,000 between the 2 of them. Now, think about this. I got this letter from Notre Dame about 8 weeks ago about the tuition for next year. And so, of course, from Notre Dame, so it's from Father Jenkins, the president of Notre Dame. Right? The first paragraph goes something like this. It was like, "Dear parents, we want to thank you for the blessing you're bestowing upon us in entrusting the soul of your child to us for their education during their time here in South Bend," right? First, it's a priest writing this, right? And then it's Notre Dame, right? So you can hear the music from Rudy in the background, right? Here, right? You can close your eyes, you can see the Golden Dome, touchdown Jesus, first down Moses, all of them, right? You can see them all across campus, and your heart starts pounding. It's great. So, of course, the second paragraph, because he's a priest, is the money paragraph, right? So after he gets you feeling emotional, the tears are welling up in your eyes, you see little Rudy running out of the tunnel at Notre Dame Stadium, it's great, right? Then he says, "That's why we're so pleased to tell you that this year the increase in tuition at Notre Dame will only be 3.9%. Now remember that inflation's at like 1.5%. So it's 2.5, 3 times the rate of inflation. And said, and that means that that's the lowest percentage increase in tuition at Notre Dame in 40 years. A 4% annual increase in tuition is the lowest increase in Notre Dame in 40 years. Extraordinary. And then he finishes off the paragraph by saying, and that's why total student costs next year will be $61,750. Now, the other thing about the bill, because then the bill comes, that's just the letter softening you up. Because they don't want to give you the heart attack with just the bill. So they figure if we ease him into it, when the bill comes, he'll just be resigned to it. So the bill comes. Now, you've looked at college bills. I've looked at college bills. Maybe you have. It is the most opaque bill in the world, right? It has 3 lines. Tuition, room and board, other fees. $61,750. Now, if you're at the Lab and Lager tonight, if you were all to sit down and have some dinner afterwards, and I hope if you haven't already, you will, and this gentleman came up to you afterwards and handed you a bill, and it said, food, $100, right? You'd go, "Hey, dude, come over here for a second, all right? I don't know what you think you're trying to pull here, but I just did fall off the turnip truck. Would you please tell me how much this and that and this and that costs? How much were the wings? How much were the beers? How much was the bottle of wine? Lay it out for me so we know what we got here." And he'd go back and he'd give you a detailed bill. Try to do that for college. Right? We laugh about it, but it's true. We don't even know what we're paying for. We don't even know what we're paying for. So as president, one of the things I would do is this. 1, they have to give us a detailed bill on exactly where all the money's going. I think if they did, there'd be a lot of embarrassment in America. And that's one way to kind of keep things capped. Second thing is, I think they should unbundle the bill. So let's say your child lives close to campus and says, "You know what? With the expenses and everything, I'm going to live at home, and I just want to go to class, do my work, and come home. Use the library, that's it. I don't need all the other stuff." You should be able to pay it that way. We should unbundle it. That would put market pressure on these bills, because if 85% of the kids don't want something that they're offering, they're going to start to think, do I really need to spend money on this? Is it wise? Can I afford to spend money on it because it's not being funded? That's putting some market pressure on it, because we can't put market pressure on it, right? At least I couldn't. I don't know about you. But now, I got this bill for $61,750 from Notre Dame, right? My daughter sends me pictures, like on a regular basis, from different parts of campus as she's walking around. Look at how beautiful it looks as the leaves are changing. Right by the administration building. Isn't it great, Dad? I love my school, right? Now, I'm going to have the conversation with this daughter that, like, from a market perspective, I don't really think Notre Dame's a value anymore. So we're going to send you someplace else. How exactly is that going to go with my 19-year-old daughter, right? After the crying, and you're ruining my life, Oh, and Mary Pat, God, you know what? Mary Pat's pretty tough, though. I might have her on my side. You know, the slamming door, the whole thing. You know what's happening. I'm sending her back. And part of the reason I'm sending, and they know that. They know it. They know it. They absolutely know it. I'm not just talking about Notre Dame. I'm talking about any other university worth their salt in this country sells what they have. Give you another great example. Andrew considered Notre Dame. And we were on the side, our oldest son, and we were on the sidelines for a football game when we went to go and visit the school. And Father Jenkins came around and he put his arm around Andrew. He said, "So Andrew, who else are we competing with for you to come to Notre Dame?" And he said, "Well, I've applied early decision for early action for Princeton." And just then, the public address announcer comes over the loudspeaker and he says, "And ladies and gentlemen, here they are, the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame." And out of the tunnel run the 100 Notre Dame football players. 80,000 people get on their feet screaming and cheering. And Father Jenkins puts his arm around Andrew and he says, "Andrew, look around. I'm sure the exact same thing is happening at Princeton right now." And I looked at him, I said, "Father, dirty pool." And he said, "You got to sell what you got, Governor." Schools understand this, so we need to put, and here's the kicker to it. If they won't do those things, then you can't participate in the federal loan program and you can't participate in the federal grant program. Right? That's the kicker. Because if you're going to use taxpayer money, then you got to be transparent to the taxpayers on where this money is going. And that's the way that we get these schools. In New Jersey, we call this gentle persuasion. Right? If you do that, if you don't participate and you don't show parents and students what they're paying for and give them an option to pay it differently, then don't take taxpayer money then. You're able to support your school without any taxpayer money? God bless, good luck. But if we're going to be paying, then that's what we need to do. So I think renegotiate those loans, give them the opportunity to do it, give them an option to be able to work off some of their loan through some form of public service as they begin the early part of their career, and then work on keeping these costs down. I think if we do those things, we have a chance to control it. Right now, it's completely out of control. And the one thing we don't want to do is cut the loan program, because for some kids, like for me, if we hadn't had the loan program, I wouldn't have been able to go to college. My parents just would not have been able to afford to send me. And so I don't want to choke off the problem there. The problem is they're charging too much. So let's choke off the problem there, not at the access point. So that's what I would do on that issue. Yes, sir.
Let's start off and assume that we're talking about Muslim terrorists. I'm sorry,
It's good. Go ahead.
Muslim terrorists, as opposed to folks that are raising Cain.
Yep.
If we do annihilate or at least destroy ISIS or their effectiveness, we leave a vacuum. And what happens usually in these vacuums, as Ron Paul says, is that the people that we don't want, like perhaps Iran, Syria, come in and they take over. So if we have a battle with ISIS, now we have a battle with somebody else because we've created a vacuum and somebody undesirable comes in. So what's the solution to all this?
Well, listen, first off, I would think ISIS is pretty undesirable to start with. And secondly, I'd say to you that that's why I advocate for letting our allies fight this fight against ISIS more than the United States. The Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Emiratis, the Saudis, the Turks, they have a direct interest. And that direct interest in fighting this is self-preservation. ISIS is not satisfied with having part of Iraq and part of Syria, which is where they are now. Believe me, they want more. They're a theocracy, as you know. They believe in a religious running of their society. The Saudis, the Egyptians, the Emiratis, the Jordanians don't want that. And so they're the most fathom. When we hear it, 17 or 18 trillion, you're like, okay, 17 or 18 trillion. We can't even imagine how much that is. Right? So what do we need to do? When it's gotten that large, simply cutting spending is not going to fix the problem. We have to have and right now, this president have economic growth anywhere from 1.5% to 2.5%. And 2.5% was his high watermark a couple of years ago. Is adding to our problem as he continues to spend, and we don't have increasing revenue based upon increased economic activity. We've got decreasing ways to pay down that debt. So you have to come at this from both ends. we have to control spending. And we shouldn't be spending any more than we're spending now. I'm suggesting very detailed ways to reapportion that spending. Part of it towards debt, part of it towards national defense, and part of it towards our entitlement program. The program I put out saves $1.2 trillion at a minimum over the next 10 years if we made the entitlement changes that we talked about. But the other part is we have to change our tax and regulatory system in this country in order to get economic growth back at 4%. We've had it. We've had 4% after Jack Kennedy cut taxes in the early 1960s. We had 4% growth, almost 5% growth, after Ronald Reagan cut taxes in the early 1980s and the mid-80s. And we had nearly 5% growth again under Bill Clinton in the 90s. This can be done. It's not an impossible task, but we have to give people the incentive to do it, and we have to stop having a tax system and a regulatory system that puts more burdens on the backs of owners of every business, whether you're a Fortune 50 business or whether you're this business right here. Small business in this country, according to the SBA, the Small Business Administration of the Obama administration, says that federal regulation now costs every small business $10,000 per employee. Now think about that. $10,000 per employee for regulation. And you shouldn't be surprised to hear that, because just last year the Obama administration issued 81,000 new pages of federal regulation in 2014 alone. And so this is on the back of every business owner across this country and every corporate executive. And all the money they spend complying with government regulation are sunken costs. They are costs that do not do anything to generate a job or generate economic activity. Add that to a tax system now where our businesses are taxed at the highest rate of any country in the world, at 35%. And add to that a federal individual income tax system, which has become a nightmare for regular people, who are the people who create jobs. I mean, the loopholes and the deductions that are in that system are not used by the overwhelming majority of the American people. The overwhelming majority use the standard deduction. That's it, because they don't have all these things. They don't have a lobbyist in Washington to get a special loophole for them. So real quickly, what I would do to get our economy growing again is, on the individual tax system, get this down to just 3 rates again. 28% being the highest rate, which is what Reagan did in '86 with a Democratic senator from New Jersey, Bill Bradley. They came together, compromised on real tax reform. 28% highest rate. Lowest rate, 8%. And pick a rate in the middle. Doesn't really much matter to me. Let's negotiate a rate in the middle. Get rid of all of the deductions and loopholes on the individual system except for the home mortgage interest deduction, so we continue to encourage home ownership in this country, and the charitable contribution deduction, so we continue to support our charities and philanthropies around the country to do good for those who are in need. Everything else goes. There's going to be some stuff you really like, but it's got to go. I mean, listen, the state and local income tax, the state and local tax deduction, they love that in New Jersey, given how high our taxes are, right? And you like it here. There are going to be some people who pay their fair share of taxes. On the business side, get rid of those deductions and those loopholes also. Bring it down to 25% from 35%. We don't need to be the lowest business tax country in the world. We offer a lot of other advantages, but we do need to be in the middle of the pack. 25% will put us in the middle of the pack. And we have about $2 trillion, as you know, in profits from American companies that operate overseas that they're not bringing back here, because we're one of the few countries in the world, including North Korea, who double taxes. So you pay the taxes over in Great Britain. If you made the money there, let's say you're General Electric, you make a certain amount of money in Great Britain, you pay taxes there. Then General Electric wants to bring their money back to Connecticut, they pay taxes again. So what are they doing? They're leaving the money in Great Britain. And so what I say is, let's give them a one-time chance to repatriate that money, invest it in American jobs. We'll tax them at 8.75%, because 8.75% of $2 trillion is a heck of a lot more than the 35% of zero. And that's what's happening right now. That'll bring us some increased revenue into the Treasury as well, without having to raise taxes on anybody. And on the regulatory side, I do a lot of things, but 3 things real quick. One is I signed an executive order, just like I did as governor of New Jersey. My first executive order as governor. Executive order number 1 was freeze any new regulation from any state department or agency for 90 days and send my lieutenant governor out to hold public hearings with small businesses across the state and find out from them which regulations got put into effect in the last 4 years that are ridiculous, that are costly, and they're not doing anything to help you or help the public. At the end of that cycle, In the first year as governor, we got rid of 1/3 of the Corzine-era regulations in the first year. That lifted a big, big yoke off the backs of our business people. We'd do the same thing as president, freeze regulation for 90 days, and let's look at which ones we can get rid of. Second, I would put in a net zero policy for regulation. If we want to issue 2,000 pages of new regulation, we got to sunset 2,000 pages of regulation. We should not add to this monster in any way. Third, I would get our counsel's office in the White House during the transition to go through every executive order that Barack Obama signed in 8 years, and on day one have a stack of executive orders for me rescinding the ridiculous, overreaching executive orders that Obama had. If we do those things, we'll get the economy moving and we'll give you guys a chance. By reducing the debt, then, we'll give you guys a chance. Right now, you're at 23, you're right to have that sticker on. I'm glad you're involved because you know it's about giving you a chance to be able to succeed in this country. Not a guarantee, just a chance. All right, the young man in the Patriots hat.
Well, you're probably not a Patriots fan, I take it.
No, listen, I have my own problems. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan.
All right, well, I'll give you that. First of all,
As most of America learned last year when I was hugging Jerry Jones. So
I'd like to commend you because I've been in this bar many times. It's never been this quiet ever. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Two-part question. I'm 60 years old. I'm not worried so much about me. I'm worried about my grandkids, my kids having a good life. I'm worried seriously about the terrorist threat that we have. John F. Kennedy and Reagan were the best presidents I've ever seen in my life. And I don't think the presidents that we have now have the guts to do anything about what's going on in the world. So I'd like to see somebody step up and just take the bull by the horns. Would you be willing to do that? Because
you're the first person who ever asked me that, you know?
Would I be willing? I'm not the last because it's a serious problem.
And what's the second part? I'll try to deal with both.
It's the old part about politicians. They tell you all that you want to hear. Yeah. And then when they get in office, they don't give a damn rat's ass about you.
Yeah.
And you tell it like it is, so I'm telling it like it is.
Good. So I'll deal with the first part first, then the second part. On the first part, you know, one of the people that I've been talking to about foreign policy to learn things I need to learn over the course of the last year or so has been Henry Kissinger.
That's me.
Is it you?
Great timing, huh?
Hey, listen. You've had a tough night. I called on the younger guy behind you. Now your phone goes off when I'm answering about world peace.
Yeah, but you know, this is the real world. It's your
Get this guy.
my world and the real
That's right.
world,
Get this guy another beer, would you please? Come on, quickly.
And I'll take it.
That's right. One of the people I've been talking about to learn about foreign policy over time, and he's been incredibly generous with his time with me, has been Henry Kissinger. And I asked him, you know, what's the key to foreign policy? And Henry Kissinger said to me, the two indispensable parts of a successful American foreign policy are courage and character by the American president. He said, you can learn everything else, Governor. Everything else about the world you can learn. But you can't teach courage and you can't teach character.
That's correct.
You either have it or you don't. And so over the course of time, you know, you're going to have to make the assessment about that vis-a-vis me. But I will tell you, I've been accused of lots of things in New Jersey over time. I've never been accused of not having the guts to take the bull by the horns and speak my mind. And I think that what we need more than anything else in this country right now in foreign policy is somebody who's willing to do that. That doesn't mean going out and picking fights with people all over the world. It means speaking straight to your allies so they know the limits of your friendship, and speaking clearly to our adversaries so they understand the limits of our patience.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Do you think foreign policy where a country attacks us, kills 3,000 women and children, we should sit back and try to have policy? Why don't we just go kick their ass?
Well, listen, I think, to be fair...
We're talking women and children.
Listen, let me first answer the kicking ass part.
Okay.
And then the other part. I think George W. Bush did the very best he could to try to answer that call. And I was appointed United States Attorney for New Jersey on September 10th, 2001, by George W. Bush. And the next day, one of those planes left an airport in my state and contributed to that 3,000 person death toll. My wife went to work as she normally did on September 11th through the World Trade Center and went to her office 2 blocks from the World Trade Center that day. And I was on the phone with her after the first plane hit, and she told me there's nothing to worry about. They said it's a commuter plane, no big deal. And we were on the phone when the second plane hit. And she said to me, they told us we have to go to the basement of our building, they're evacuating us. I didn't hear from her again for 5.5 hours. And we had an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 1-year-old at the time. And the 8-year-old and 6-year-old came home from school. They had been told about the attacks at school. And they said, is mom okay? And I couldn't answer them. On the longest 5.5 hours of my life, luckily my wife came home safe. But our neighbor who we went to the same parish with, we were at his wife's home that night because he didn't come home. And she sat there with us, kept saying, he's going to call any time now. You watch, he'll call, he'll be fine. He's at a hospital somewhere. He never called. Our oldest son's best friend's dad was killed that day. And ever since Facebook has started, every day, every year on that man's birthday, his son puts his picture on the cover of his Facebook page and he says, Dad, we'll never forget you. No one has to explain to me what happened on September 11th. I went to the funerals, and I've seen the people and the loss they've had over the last 13 years. My state lost more people on 9/11 than any state in the country other than New York. And I had the responsibility immediately thereafter for trying to make sure it never happened again. And so I agree with your sentiment completely. This isn't about policy, remember. I said to you, this is about courage and character. Now, you need to understand the world to make good use of your courage and your character, and to make good use of the American lives that you'll put in harm's way if you decide that courage and character and policy requires going over and doing exactly what you said. And since you're the person sitting in the Oval Office who has to make that call to put my son or daughter or your son and daughter in harm's way, we better make sure we've thought that through and had a good, sensible policy to do it. But in the end, the American people need to know that there are limits to our patience. The folks around the world need to understand that if you challenge us and we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. That's why the President of the United States blew it in Syria when he drew a red line, and then they did it, and then he didn't do anything about it, said never mind. The thing that matters the most, and I think what Dr. Kissinger is saying about courage and character, is if the word of the President of the United States can't be counted on, we are weakened significantly. Our friends can't count on us, and our adversaries won't fear us. And both things have to be true. Now, about politicians who say one thing and then do another, that's why I'm talking about the things I'm talking about. Nobody who was just looking to throw the high hard one by you would start a conversation with entitlement reform. There's no chance it's going to make everybody happy. You know, there's no reason to bring it up. There's plenty of things you could bring up that give political advantage to you that then you can ditch once you get into office. This ain't one of them. There's no reason people shouldn't bring it up if you're looking for political advantage. My career has been based on the fact that I am in one of the bluest states, if not the bluest state in the country. Now, California and New York will argue with us about whether they're blue or not, but let me tell you this. In the last 42 years, we haven't elected a Republican to the United States Senate from New Jersey. It's the longest streak of any state in the country. California's had a Republican elected since then. New York, not us. I have governed in this really tough state. What it's led me to do is to know that I'm playing with house money. I don't belong in that state governing the way I'm governing, if you listen to the pundits. But not only did I get elected the first time, but I got reelected with 61% of the vote. That's not because they agreed with everything that I did. It's because they knew that if I said I was going to do something, I did it. And if I said I wouldn't, I won't. And so you may come to the decision that you don't agree with everything that I have to say as you go through this campaign. But here's one thing I can guarantee you. If I say I'm going to do something, I am going to move heaven and earth to get it done. And if I say I'm not going to do something, I'm going to move heaven and earth to not do it. And I think that's why people in New Jersey have voted for me twice, even though I'm a conservative Republican. And I think that's why when I'm elected President of the United States, you're going to have to change that last statement you made, because it's going to be one of the first times that somebody actually went in there and didn't BS you.
I'll be looking forward to it.
Good. Yes, sir.
A little bit lighter note.
Sure.
Did you fall asleep at that Springsteen concert?
No. And you see, I'm glad someone asked that. No. You know, I've been to 124 Bruce Springsteen concerts. Listen, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, so come on. I gotta have some vice, all right? So, I've been to 124 Springsteen concerts. I went to my first one when I was 13 years old. And it's a rite of passage in New Jersey for some of us. And I grew up with him. That night, he was playing a particularly spiritual song, and I leaned back and closed my eyes and just let the music come over me. Here's the problem when you're the very recognizable governor of New Jersey. People are taking pictures and videos of me constantly. You probably saw that when I was yelling at the guy with the ice cream cone in my hand on the boardwalk. I mean, you know, no matter what it is I'm doing, right, I'm getting pictured. So yeah, no, I didn't fall asleep. I would never fall asleep during a Springsteen show. It could never happen. It is genetically and physically impossible for me to fall asleep during a Springsteen show. Couldn't happen. So no, I did not. But I appreciate you asking. And by the way, the New Jersey press who here will remember that I got asked about this a couple of times in the aftermath, and I brought out from one of her offices one of my staff members who was with me at that concert, along with a number of folks, including my wife, and I brought Deborah out, and I said, listen, you've never appeared at a gubernatorial press conference, but here's your moment, get out here. Did I fall asleep at that concert? She said, no. I said, thank you, you're dismissed. Go ahead, go back to your office. So yeah, no, didn't fall asleep, never would. Enjoy Bruce's music too much to fall asleep.
What capitalism is about, and has done extremely well. And now don't tell me because you've got political experience, that's not what... I don't really want to hear that. I know you've done a lot.
Well, I love the fact that you asked the question and tell me what I can answer.
I'm
It sounds
like
to me.
that. That's the way I am.
It sounds to me like now I understand exactly why you like Donald. Because Donald, and by the way, as do I. I mean, I'm happy to answer. Donald and I have been friends for 13 years.
I know that because I watch Fox News and I've heard you say that.
Yeah, so we've been friends for a long time. Here's the thing. I just don't believe that the skills that you're talking about that Donald has are transferable to a governmental setting. I just don't. See, because Donald would tell Speaker Boehner, I want this bill and I want it on my desk because this is what's best for America. And Speaker Boehner will look at him and say, yeah, well, I don't have the votes for that, so I can't give it to you. He can't look at him and say, Speaker Boehner, you're fired. He can't do that. You can do it on a reality TV show, but you cannot fire the Speaker of the House or the Senate Majority Leader because you don't get what you want. Now, that's the way Donald has operated in part successfully, not only on the reality TV show, but in his real life. And it's not just him, it's any CEO of a company.
In other words, you're saying that you have to be a politician?
No, what I'm saying is you have to have some experience in knowing how to deal with people in that way, and he has not shown that over the course of his career.
Well,
I know, then we have a fundamental disagreement, but
that's right.
Yeah, so that's okay, then vote for Donald Trump, it's fine. It's a free country, and you can vote for whoever you want who's on the ballot on February 9th here. But here's the thing. There are certain skills that you have to be able to operate in a system that is built upon compromise. And I don't care whether it's Donald Trump or whether it's the CEO of General Electric or it's the CEO of Time Warner or any of the major companies in this country. When you're CEO, you're able to make decisions and have them implemented and be order them to be implemented. I have probably the most powerful governorship in America constitutionally. The New Jersey Constitution gives to the governor of New Jersey enormous authority. We appoint the Attorney General. We appoint the State Controller. We appoint every judge from the Superior Court all the way up to the Supreme Court. I appoint every county prosecutor. I have the veto, the line item veto, the conditional veto where I can, Tom would love this, where I can rewrite the bill and then send it back to the legislature like I like it. And I have to compromise all the time, even with the most powerful governorship. And the governorship of New Jersey is more powerful constitutionally than the President of the United States. As a constitutional matter, absolutely. The President of the United States doesn't have the line item veto. The President of the United States doesn't have the conditional veto. The President's constitutional authority is significantly less than the constitutional authority. I'm not saying governor is a more powerful position, but the constitutional authority is much narrower than in New Jersey. So I'm not going to try to convince a Trump supporter that somehow, I'm right. But all I can tell you is that's my opinion, and I'm as welcome to mine as you are to yours. Okay. In the end, I would tell you, and I've said this to Donald, I think if he became president, he would be incredibly frustrated. Because what he does in the business world could not be replicated in the world of government or in the world of international relations. For instance, when he says that he's going to build a wall across the entire 2,000-mile border between the United States and Mexico, and he's going to make Mexico pay for it. Now that's a great line, right? Everybody loves that. Great, we're going to get the wall, we don't have to pay for it. All I want you to explain to me.
Got a lot of attention with that, though.
Of course he did. And I don't know whether, I thought we were talking about actually governing our country and not getting attention. If the goal here is to find the person to be president of the United States who can get the most attention, he's going to win hands down. If it is the person who can most effectively govern our nation and deal with the world, I'd suggest to you that I'm in this race because I think I'd be better at it than he would. You have a different opinion? Then vote for him. It's fine by me. I don't need to get every vote. I just got to get more than anybody else. Yes, young lady right over here.
I work at I work at our local CAB agency, Southwestern Community Service, as a Head Start teacher. And I was wondering how you were going to sustain all the vital programs that we have that are so important to our families, children, and the staff that work in them.
And when you say all the vital programs, you're talking about obviously beyond Head Start.
Head Start, the electric assistance,
Well, as I said before in reaction to this gentleman's question, America has always been a compassionate society where we have taken care and taken very good care of the least fortunate in our society. Doesn't mean we're perfect, but we've been able to do so. And the only way I can prove this to you is during my time in New Jersey, we have done, I think, a very good job under very difficult fiscal circumstances of taking care of those folks in our state who have been least fortunate. And whether it's concerning the recent increase in the earned income tax credit that we just gave, we increased it 50% for the working poor to make sure they had more money in their pocket to try to help their families. Whether it was dealing with the issue of drug addiction in our state, where now in our state, if you're a first-time nonviolent drug offender, you're not going to prison. You're going to go to mandatory inpatient rehab to try to give you the tools that you need to save your life and to help your family. Or whether it's with our developmentally disabled community, where we have spent more money and more time with new innovative programs, moving people away from institutional setting and into a group home setting, so that every child, whether the rest of discretionary spending is down $2.3 billion, but not in those areas where the neediest have needed help and have gotten a hand up because of it. And so that's the way I would conduct myself as president. But at the same time, I was able to eliminate over 800 programs in our state. We have 9,500 fewer state employees than we had. That's an interesting ringtone. 9,500 fewer employees than we had the day I became governor. I mean, all those things I'm proud of too, because we have to manage within the budgets that you give us. And I don't want to be raising taxes again on the people in New Jersey who, before I became governor, had their taxes and fees raised at the state level 115 times in 8 years. 115 times in 8 years. So that's governing, and it's about choosing. But I think if you look at the record that we put forward in New Jersey, it will give you a good roadmap for the type of choices that we would make concerning folks who need the help of the government the most, as long as we're doing so in a way that's efficient and effective. And whether it's the program you work for in Head Start, or whether it's other programs like I just mentioned in New Jersey, those are things that I think most Americans support, because we want to see people reach their fullest God-given potential, because that's going to make us a better country. My parents taught me over and over and over again that if I worked hard enough, I could be whatever I wanted to be. And that wasn't a commentary just on whatever they saw as my skills or talents. That was their commentary on this country. That what we value the most is the ingenuity that you bring to your work every day and the work ethic you bring. And if we give people an opportunity to do that through some of the programs you're talking about and other opportunities, then we're doing the right thing by those people, but most importantly, we're doing the right thing by our country. So that's how I'd answer your question. I appreciate you asking it. All right, gentlemen over here standing up.
In September of 2008, I lived in a small little town in New Jersey called Mendham.
That's where I live.
Yeah.
What a coincidence.
By the way, at St. Joe's, say hi to my father, my mother, my uncles. They're all buried out there in the cemetery.
All right. That's a little graveyard.
Yeah. I moved here in September of 2008 because my state income tax I was paying 9% my income.
Yeah.
And I was selling my business. I couldn't afford to stay there. And I said, these Democrats are killing me. I move up here. 2 months later, we got a Republican governor. And I said to myself, how the heck did he do that? How did he become governor of New Jersey?
Charm and good looks.
Okay. Now, I understand the second time. It's because you tell it like it is, and what you do is what you do. But how did you convince the Democrats of New Jersey to vote for you the first time? And how are you going to convince the Democrats throughout this country, once you get the nomination, to vote for you?
All right, well, first of all, we miss you. Listen, it was not just my effort, okay, that got me elected the first time. John Corzine was a god-awful governor.
Yeah.
Okay? And so, part of this is, it's not just like it's not just in isolation, all right? So it's a choice, all right? So first off, I was running against a guy who was just an awful governor and was perceived to be an awful governor by the people of New Jersey. So that helps to start with. That a lot of Democrats, forget about independents and Republicans, a lot of Democrats were disillusioned with John Corzine. But secondly, I just went out there and told them what I thought. And said to them, if you give me a chance, I'm always going to tell you the truth. Whether you like it or not, it's up to you, but I'm going to tell you the truth.
Do you think that can happen across?
Of course, I think it can happen across the country, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
It had my 16th time to New Hampshire since January. I am not coming here for my health, brother. All right? This is not just, it's not just because I like the weather, okay? I mean, I'm coming up here because I absolutely believe it and I think I can win.
Yeah.
I am not in this for the experience. Okay? This is not something you do, at least me, that you do for the experience. You do it because you absolutely believe you can make a difference in your country and that you can win. Yeah. I think this. I think the American people, after 8 years of Barack Obama, do not want a third term of Barack Obama. And Hillary Clinton, if she beats Bernie Sanders, will be a third term of Barack Obama. She agrees with him on the Iran deal. And I will tell you, I listened to her, Hillary Clinton, I listened to her economic speech. Her plan to create jobs is to give paid sick leave and increase the minimum wage. Now, I never saw sick leave create a job or be the cause for creating a job. When I listen to Hillary Clinton now, I could swear I'm listening to the woman across the border from here, Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts. Okay, well, it's true. She's moving further and further to the left because she is afraid of Bernie Sanders. And she has every right to be, by the way, because remember something. She ran 8 years ago and got beat to her left by Barack Obama. She didn't want that to happen again. And so I think by the time she gets done running to her left to get the nomination, the American people are getting the real good sense of who she is. Elections are choices, is my point. They are not in the abstract. It's not just looking at one candidate, do I like him or her or don't I? It is a choice. We don't get to just pick whoever we want. Eventually, there'll be a Republican nominee and a Democratic nominee, and then it's a choice. In my case, in '09, as you'll recall, it was a Republican nominee, a Democratic nominee, and an independent who had been a Republican, which made it even harder for me. This is a guy who served in a Republican administration. So votes that he took, he was taking off of the Republican side of the ledger, and we won anyway. I think at that point, let's assume we get to July, August of 2016, and I'm the Republican nominee for president, and let's assume that Mrs. Clinton makes her way, and she's the Democratic nominee for president, then there's going to be a choice between Hillary Clinton and Chris Christie. And I will tell you this, I feel good about my chances. Let's go that guy right there. Yes, sir. You raised your hand for a while. Sure.
Second Amendment. Here you go, sir. Second Amendment and the illegals that are here now, that are costing us a fortune. What are you going to do with them? And the ones that we've made legal, that were still on welfare, what are you going to do with them?
All right, let's start with the first one. On Second Amendment, I think what we need to be focused on as a country is to be prosecuting the criminals who are using guns across our country and not going after law-abiding citizens who are either hunters, collectors, or have their weapons for self-defense. We have enough laws on the books. And the fact of the matter is that the criminals don't use the legal system to get their guns anyway. And so why don't we focus on, as we did in the Bush administration, we had a program called Project Safe Neighborhoods. The U.S. attorneys across this country were mandated by the President of the United States to go after criminals in possession of weapons. And we put thousands of them in prison across this country, and rightfully so. Those are the folks who are committing crime, who are killing people by the scores in Chicago and in other major cities in our country. That's what we should be focused on, not the next law that someone wants to pass to get a headline in the newspaper that makes you feel good but doesn't make America or Americans any safer. Now, on the folks who are not here legally, a couple of things. First off, we got to agree on a couple of things, I think. First off, as to these people, whatever number you put them at, 10 million, 11 million, 12 million, whatever number you use. Two things I think we should agree on. One, they're not going to self-deport, right? These folks are not going to leave voluntarily, all right? So that's out. And I can tell you, as a former federal law enforcement official, that we do not have enough law enforcement at the local, county, state, and federal level to forcibly deport 10 or 11 or 12 million people. It's not going to happen. We could be regretful about the situation that we're in. It developed over 30 years of neglect by presidents of both parties and Congresses of both parties. But we're not going to physically deport these people, all these folks. The criminals should be put in jail when they commit crimes, and when they're done serving their time, they should be sent back to their country of origin. We shouldn't have sanctuary cities in this country. It's outrageous. But I will tell you that that's a symptom of this administration. Now, I had some guy giving me a hard time outside as well about marijuana. Now, marijuana is illegal in the United States of America. We have federal law making it illegal. This president says, yes, it's illegal, but if you and your state want to make it legal, go ahead, we're not going to bother you. See, sanctuary cities are the same thing. The federal government has immigration laws that cover the very people you're talking about. But this president says, you don't want to enforce the federal immigration law? You don't like it? Don't worry about it. We're not going to give you a hard time about it. He has set an ethic in this country that changes the oath. Now, I took an oath as governor, and it was a long one. But the part I remember, for the purpose of this, is that I swore to faithfully enforce the laws of the United States and the state of New Jersey. It didn't say, I will faithfully enforce the laws that I like in the state of New Jersey. If I'm President of the United States, we are going to enforce the laws uniformly. And so, for the people in Colorado, get high now. Okay? Because come January 2017, it's not going to happen. And for sanctuary cities across this country, understand. A Christie administration will make sure that the law is enforced across the board. The last piece I'll say to you is that we better get this border squared away before we even begin to talk about what to do next. We have to get that done. We have to make sure our border is secure. And there's a bunch of different ways we can do that, and I've talked about that as well. But to answer your question directly, the big problem is that we've let the problem go so far that you have a group of people who are not going to self-deport, and this country does not have the resources to be able to deport 10, 11, 12 million people by force. And so if we agree on that, then we know there's a narrow path of what we're going to do with those folks. But I don't think the American people even want to have that conversation until they're convinced they have a president who will enforce the border so that we're not adding to that 10 or 11 or 12 million people with a few more million people. I'll go quickly what I would do, real quick, just bullet points. Number one, build a fence or a wall in the areas where it makes sense, not the whole thing, but in areas where it makes sense. Have Mexico pay for it. Two, we got to make sure that we use more Border Patrol officers in conjunction with FBI, DEA, and ATF to intercept the criminals who are coming across the border, running drugs and running guns into our country. They need to be apprehended, arrested, and put in prison. Third, we need to use electronic surveillance, drones and cameras in the more difficult parts of the border so that we can then see where the activity is and effectively deploy our human resources to those areas where people are now trying to sneak across. And fourth, and I think most importantly, is that every business in this country should be required to use E-Verify. And if they hire someone who's illegal, they should be fined so much money that it will wipe out whatever profit they made by hiring cheaper labor. Remember something, I've met lots of undocumented folks in New Jersey over the course of my time as governor. Not one of them has ever come and said to me, Governor, the reason I came to America was I wanted to vote. Not one of them ever said that to me. That's why this path to citizenship stuff is just pandering. The fact is they came here to work. And if we dry up the labor market and say that if you want to work here, that's fine, come here legally. But if you come here illegally, we have to make the penalties, because remember something, there are American employers throughout this country who are knowingly employing illegal immigrants. And they're doing it in large measure to increase profit. Well, then we need to eliminate that profit for them so that they hire legal residents of this country, whether they're citizens or legal residents, and not the illegals, which draw more people to come if they know it's going to come here. I believe this country's got to continue to allow legal immigration. That's the way we've grown, that's the way we've flourished and developed, that's the way almost everybody in this room probably got here. And it's for my family too. My mom's dad was born on the boat between Sicily and the United States. My great-grandfather and great-grandmother so desperately wanted to come to the United States. He was a Mason, and he heard they were building lots of things over here in the United States. He wanted to come. When his ticket was called that he could come here legally, my great-grandmother was 9 months pregnant, and she got on the boat. And she gave birth to my grandfather in the middle of the ocean. Now, my mother used to tease her father about this all the time. She'd say to my grandfather, "You're nothing. You're not Italian, you're not American, you were born in the middle of the ocean, you're nothing." My mother thought this was funny. My grandfather did not. And my grandfather passed away when I was about 9 years old, so I have few memories of him, but this is one of them, because he was so emotional about it. He would get himself really worked up, angry, tears in his eyes. He'd say, "Don't say that in front of my grandson. I'm an American. They made me an American when I landed at Ellis Island. As a baby, they made me an American." He was so proud that he and his parents had come here the right way. And he became a Mason too. And they helped to build the city of Newark and the city of Jersey City with their hands. And so we need to continue to have people like that who want to come to this country, but they got to come and do it the right way. And that's what the next president has to enforce.
Governor, Pete from the overflow crowd had a question for you.
All right, so my staff says I can take one more question, which means I will take two, because I want them to know that I am still the boss. I have not come back over. I have not come back over here, the gentleman in the Navy hat.
Governor, the Veterans Administration is a mess.
Yes, sir.
What would you do to fix it? Because the people that go out and put their ass on the line and get shot need to be taken care of.
They do. Few things. Make it simple, direct, and I'll give you some examples from what I've done in New Jersey to back up what I'm saying. So I continue to have my young friend, the Patriot hat, believe that when I actually say I'm going to do something, I actually do it, and I'm not going to be one of those other guys. So get your get your next beer, keep listening, okay? So here we go. First, for you, I will. All right, so a few things. First, the Veterans Administration has in the main become a healthcare organization. Yet, we continue to make the mistake of putting, military folks, with the exception of the new guy now, military folks in charge of the Veterans Administration who may or may not have the experience in running a healthcare organization. If I were president, I would look for the very best hospital executive who's had the most success across the country and ask that man or woman to come and sacrifice time in their country to straighten out this Veterans Administration mess and to run it in a way that they will deliver health care to our veterans in an efficient and effective way. I think we need someone like that. We can have military folks who help to advise them, but I think we need someone who knows how to do that to come in and straighten it out. Second, they can't wait. The vets can't wait until that gets fixed. Now, this choice program that they've started, we need to make it even simpler and better. Your veterans card should be able to get you health care at any health care practitioner, doctor, physical therapist, hospital in this country. Present your card and get your health care paid for. Well, yeah.
90% of his money is spent on bureaucracy.
Well, and that's why, first off, you need to get someone who's run a private sector hospital system in place, who knows how to cut costs and be able to make sure that the people who are actually working are the people we need. Second, if you give this choice program a broader application, a lot of folks won't go back to the VA, and we're going to need less of those places. We will always need some VA hospitals and facilities to provide the kind of specialized care that they have experience in providing, that the private sector is less experienced in providing in some areas of our country. But we're going to need less of those folks, and I think it will lessen the amount of bureaucracy, the number of employees, and the expense that goes along with that. And so those two things we need to do right away. An experienced healthcare executive as the secretary, and then an immediate expansion of the choice program. Here's some things we've done in New Jersey to let you know that we can do these kind of things, and we can address real immediate problems for veterans in an immediate and quick way. One of the programs I'm proudest of that we've had in our state over the course of time is something called Vets for Warriors. And this is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week, toll-free hotline for veterans who are suffering from mental health problems. And on the other end of the phone are trained veterans to speak to them whenever they call. Because no vet should be so despondent that they don't have another person they can reach out to who understands their experience and can try to help them through it. Because we're losing too many vets to suicide in this country, and it's a national disgrace. We started this program, and we had Rutgers University Hospital, and we partnered with the Federal Department of Defense. This year in April or May, I found out that the Department of Defense was cutting the funding to this program. And it was going to eliminate the program. I went to the folks at Rutgers and said, how much does it cost to run the program? The folks at Rutgers came back and said, well, Governor, to deal with New Jersey veterans, it's about $400,000 a year. And I said, yeah, but we don't just deal with New Jersey veterans, we deal with everybody, the whole country. They said, well, yeah, well, that's a lot more expensive. I said, how much? And they said $3.3 million a year to run this program. So I went to the Democratic leaders of our legislature, and I explained the situation to them, and I said, will you work with me to put that $3.3 million in our New Jersey state budget so that this program doesn't close on September 30th when the fiscal year ends for the federal government, but stays open? And I have to give credit to my Democratic colleagues. They never blinked. They looked at me and they said, Governor, you're absolutely right. We're with you. They put the money in the budget. I signed off on it. So that program is going to stay in effect. And the taxpayers of the state of New Jersey are going to foot the bill for all the vets in the country because we know it's the right thing to do for our vets. Second, we and so what we're doing now is we're working on a program with our trauma, been able to receive care at a Veterans Administration facility, and you present yourself at one of our trauma centers with your veterans card. Those hospitals promise you'll get same-day medical treatment. The state of New Jersey's program is And those hospitals are using philanthropic money they raise from individuals and from foundations to match that money so that we have the money to start this pilot program in New Jersey. It's going to start this fall. And we're going to see how this works. And will vets respond to it? Will they come and utilize it? The hospitals are going to advertise the program to make sure that vets know about it. And so we're trying to respond to exactly what your question raised on a smaller level in our own state to say, we want to try to provide same-day health care for vets who are being denied it at the VA for whatever reason so they can get it and don't have to have the worry or the physical or mental problems that would come along with delaying care. And then on the Vets for Warriors program, stepping into the breach when, for whatever reason, they're making these decisions in Washington, D.C. We didn't want those vets to dial that 800 number and have it be disconnected anytime. Any suicide by a veteran of our military is a national disgrace. We need to make sure, most importantly, as to these mental health issues, that these men and women get the access to the care that they need in a real-time basis, because delaying care for mental health issues can lead to death, sometimes even more acutely than delaying physical care for physical ailments. And so we need to do that. That's what I've done in New Jersey to show you, our commitment to what we're doing for veterans in our state. And with the Vets for Warriors program across the entire country, I'm going to bring the same commitment and the same type of approach to what we do with the Veterans Administration as President of the United States. All right. All right, this lady right there.
Hi, I'm 87.
There you go, Grandma.
My husband.
No way.
What?
There you
You
go.
look beautiful. Hi, Governor.
Hi.
I'm 87. My husband died this year, World War II veteran. He was getting veterans payments every month. They've stopped them. So I'm not getting anything. And I've tried for 6 months. I've written to everybody, and it's just on hold. They don't do anything. I'm going to get kicked out of my assisted living if I can't make my payments. What would you do?
Well, let's forget about what I would do, because I won't be president for 18 months. So you can't wait that long.
No, I can't.
So here's what we're going to do. Those of us in New Jersey get a reputation for being fairly aggressive. So here's what I'd like to do. Where is Matt? Okay, Matt Mowers, gentleman right up there. See him up there in the blue blazer? Matt's going to come to you and get your name and your contact information.
Okay.
And we're going to put the folks at our Department of Military and Veterans Affairs in New Jersey in touch with you. We'll get on the case and try to see if there's anything we can do to help, because you shouldn't have to wait 18 months for me to help you as president. I want to try to help you now, so we'll try to see what we can do. All right?
Appreciate it.
And I hope I live to 87, let alone look the way you do at 87. First off, let me thank you all for coming tonight. It's really interesting. As I've gone back home after campaigning up here, I have folks in New Jersey ask me all the time. There's a fascination with New Hampshire in this presidential process, and folks from New Jersey ask me all the time, like, what's it like to be a candidate for President of the United States in New Hampshire? And what I try to explain to them, I don't really know if I do it sufficiently or not, I'm trying, is I said, you need to understand these folks. Like I was telling them this after 4th of July weekend. I said, it was 4th of July weekend. I said, in every stop I made, I had 75 to 150 people there at a town hall meeting or a house party to sit and listen to me and to ask me questions about an election that wasn't happening for 7 months. I said, they give you a renewed optimism about our democracy. As we get cynical, and a lot of these questions tonight have had cynicism in them, and well-earned, given the way our government has operated over the course of time. But you all are the antidote to the cynicism. I'm telling you, as a candidate, it is incredibly refreshing, and Mary Pat and I talk about this every time we come home from here. They're incredibly engaged. They really care. They take their responsibility of being the people who are going to vet from 16 candidates down to some smaller number, God willing, after the New Hampshire primary, right? Who is going to be the next president of the United States? And so tonight's just another example of that. Not only the fact that you're here on a Monday night in July, but the fact that you're engaged and you ask really good, straightforward, smart questions that challenge me and make me be on my game. I appreciate it. And so first I want to say thank you, not only for what you did by being here for me tonight, but what you're doing for our country, because you're doing a great thing for America by being as engaged and caring as much as you do. Second, I want to end by just giving you a little bit of advice, unsolicited. You're going to go on my website, I hope, go to chrischristie.com and look at the really specific proposals we put forward, which is going to be the antidote for the guy I'm buying a beer for. We're not going to give... Huh? $2? Come here. Hold on. Here's 4. Don't be cheap with the bartender, all right? I got your back, fellas. Don't worry about it. That's right. Yeah, every candidate, right? Yeah. Let me tell you something. Listen, when Trump comes here, get 100 off Trump, okay? You're going to go onto this website, you're going to look at all the proposals, and we've been more detailed and more specific than the other 15 candidates in this race. And I invite you to go to every one of their websites and go to mine and look at the level of specificity we have. The reason I'm doing that is because 7 years ago, a majority of the people in this country voted for a bumper sticker. They voted for hope and change, and that was it. And we had no darn idea what hope and change was. We now know what it is, and we don't want that again. But here's the thing. Just don't vote for some other bumper sticker, all right? I mean, even a Republican bumper sticker, don't vote for that. You have, I think, the responsibility to demand that we be specific so you know what you're buying when you go in the voting booth and buy it. It shouldn't just be about flamboyance. It shouldn't just be about a famous last name. It shouldn't just be about the fact that, well, he seems okay. You should know what we're going to do. And we've done that, and we'll continue to do it as we go forward on all the issues that come up and that people care about. But despite that, the whole list of issues and all the questions you asked me tonight and all the rest of it, there are going to be things that are going to happen when I'm President of the United States that we're not going to be able to anticipate, that we would have never been able to guess. No one would have guessed 9/11. Not on the scale and the scope that it happened. No one would have guessed that George W. Bush had to be prepared for that. Nobody would have guessed that he had to be prepared for Katrina, yet Katrina came. And you can give example after example. My point is that you, as good as you all are, as experienced as many of you are in seeing presidential candidates over the years, you're not going to be able to anticipate every question. So then how do you make the decision to vote? How do you know who to vote for? The other piece of it has to be, who is that person? Who are they, and what do they stand for? And you need to know that, I would suggest to you, respectfully, until you get into that voting booth. You need to know that and then make that decision. So I want to end tonight by telling you who I am, because we didn't get to any of that. You know, I'm a son, and I'm a husband, and I'm a father. I'm a father of 4 really great kids who are giving me the opportunity to do this. I'm the husband of a really great wife who's been up here with me a lot but isn't here this time because our daughter just came home from college, and she said, I'm spending some time with her, buddy. So she's home with Sarah. But Mary Pat and I have been married for 29 years. All those things are formative in my life. A father of my 4 children and a husband to my wife for the last 29 years. But who you really are your parents. You know, we all know this. Our children take so much from us, and we take so much from our parents, good and bad, right? Whether we like it or not. You know, as I get older, I start seeing some things about me that are the things that I didn't like about my parents. Like, how did this happen to me, right? But I'm the product of an Irish father and a Sicilian mother. Yes, for those of you groaning, you know exactly what I'm implying here, right? Right over there. That's you? I knew I liked you. And it would be disrespectful for me to say that my mother was argumentative, But let's just say that she never found an argument she didn't think was worth having, right? And that's kind of the way she ran the house, right? It's the way she ran the house. My mother used to say that the one rule in our house was there is no suffering in silence. You have a grievance, I want to hear it. You have a problem or concern, I want to hear about it. Got something you need to get off your chest, I want to hear it. And if you don't tell me, then I don't want to hear later on about your problem. Then that's your problem. You put it out there, then it's our problem. And that's the way this family works. And I think she made that rule because she was the #1 participant in this rule. My mother used to lay it out every day. Every day. And when we got older, and we could actually push back a little bit, be like, Mom, enough, all right, I hear it, stop, I don't want to hear it anymore. She's like, no, Christopher, you're going to hear it now. I need to get this off my chest. She said, there will be no deathbed confessions in this family. You're going to hear it now. And so that led to a lot of very interesting interactions in our house. I used to tease my poor dad, who's this 82-year-old, gregarious, outgoing, back-slapping Irish guy who, if he were here tonight, as I was leaving, he would stay and he would hug all of you. You know, and he would tell you how, oh, thanks so much for listening to my son. He'd tell you a couple of embarrassing stories about me. And by the time you were done, you would all love him. He's just an easygoing, wonderful guy. But living with my mother, I used to tease him. I said, you know, in the automobile of life, Dad, you are merely a passenger. Right? Mom's setting the rules. She's judge, jury, and executioner. She's running the show. That was my mom. That was my, your house too? Good. You know, you can, so you know what I'm talking about. And so, you know, my dad, it's great. Are we live streaming this tonight? Yes, sir. We are. So Dad is watching back in New Jersey. He always does. So he knows how much I love him and how great it is to have him for this experience, in addition to everything else that we have him for. As a grandfather to our children, it's wonderful to have my dad around. We lost my mom 11 years ago. And, you know, for us, when you lose that central figure in your family, it was a really disorienting and difficult time that I'm sure many of you have gone through. My mom was diagnosed with lung cancer on Valentine's Day of 2004. She was a lifetime smoker. And, you know, for some people that disease progresses slowly, but for others, it progresses really quickly. Unfortunately for us, my mom was in the latter category, and you may have had that experience yourselves, members of your family or your friends. And so she got very sick very quickly. And I was U.S. Attorney at the time, and I was off at the end of April of that year at the U.S. Attorney's National Conference in San Diego. And my younger brother called me and he said, listen, Mom's taking a real turn for the worse. We had to put her back in the hospital. And the doctors are saying, if you want to see her, like, you need to get home now. So I took the red-eye flight that home from San Diego, landed the next morning in New Jersey, and got in the car, drove to the hospital. My mom was there, and they started to give her morphine. Many of you have gone through this, you know that's kind of the last step, trying to manage her pain and keep her comfortable as she nears the end. So I sat next to the bed, waited for her to come to, and eventually she woke up. And this is my mother, right? So you all should expect nothing different. There was like no hello, or how are you, or how was your trip, or anything like that. She looked at me and she said, what day is it? I said, hi, Mom, how are you? Good to see you. Thanks for missing me. It's Friday. She said, what time is it? I said, it's 9:30 in the morning. She said, go to work. I looked at her, I said, Mom, I flew from San Diego last night. I came to spend the day with you today. I'm spending the day with you. I'm taking the day off, spending it with you. She said, Christopher, it is a work day. Go to work. Like, Mom, I said, are you afraid of not getting your taxpayers' money's worth? Like, I'll make up the time. Don't worry about it. Please, I'm staying here with you. She looked at me, she grabbed my hand, and she said to me, Christopher, go to work. It's where you belong. There is nothing left unsaid between us. Other than the birth of our 4 children, it was the single most powerful moment of my life. My mother was giving me permission to let her go. And the reason it was so powerful was because at that moment I realized that everything she had done her whole life built towards this moment, and she was right. There were no deathbed confessions. There didn't need to be. Every grievance had been laid out on the table, and every concern, and just as importantly, I knew how much she loved me, and she knew how much I loved her. And she was right. I was sitting there, and there was nothing left to say. It had all been said. So I did as I was told. I got up, I kissed her on the forehead. I said, all right, Mom, I'm going to work. And I left. And that afternoon, she went into a coma, and 3 days later, she died. And it was the last conversation we ever had. And it's such a great gift she gave me to teach me that way to live your life. And if she were still alive now to see this circus that my life has become, right? She'd say lots of things to me, but I know there's two things for sure she would say. The first one is, she'd say to me, so, Mr. Big Shot, running for President of the United States. Just remember one thing, buddy, I changed your diapers, I know who you are. She would want me to keep my head on my shoulders, she would want me to stay grounded. She wouldn't want me to change, because she was pretty happy with who I was. And the second thing I know she'd say is, okay, if you're really gonna do this, and you're gonna ask these people to give you the greatest trust that they can give you, other than inside their own family, to give you their vote for President of the United States, then you better tell them exactly what you're thinking, and you better tell them exactly what you're feeling, because in a trusting relationship, that's what you do. She taught me that my whole life. And so what I'm doing and who I am and this telling like it is and all the rest of it is not just who I am, it's also in this context a tribute to her. I know she's watching. I know she is. I can feel it. And I know that she would accept nothing less from me than what I'm doing in this effort. And I know that I can promise you lots of different things and put forward all kinds of proposals. But in the end, there's only 4 things I can tell you for dead certain that you'll know about me as President of the United States. You'll never have to wonder what I'm thinking. You'll never have to wonder what I'm feeling. You'll never have to wonder what I'm willing to fight for. And you're never gonna have to wonder how hard I'm willing to fight for it. Everything else, we'll see how it goes. We'll do the best we can. We'll try to hit every one of those proposals we can hit. But in the end, I think you need to know that about whoever you're gonna vote for president. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What are they really willing to fight for? And how hard are they willing to fight for it? And so that's why I'm doing these things. And that's why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. And you need to know who I am as the most psychoanalyzed political candidate in America. You know, when I tell people to get the hell off the beach or tell them to sit down and shut up or any of that kind of stuff, and people, why does he say the things he says? Why does he do the things he does? It's her. It's her fault. It's her fault. It's all her. So I thank you for coming tonight. I thank you for your questions. I thank you for your involvement in the process. And I look forward to being back here a lot between now and primary election day in February. So thanks all for coming. I appreciate it.